Okay, so I'm super excited to be chatting with my bestie in the fluency world, my fluency friend. This is Jessica Hudson, and she has agreed to kind of talk to us about how she works with the a little bit older crowd. So we both live in the fluency space. Jessica is a business owner. Her business is called Stuttering and Speech Therapy of Arizona, and she is trained in LIDCOM approach, Palin parent-child intervention, as well as avoidance reduction therapy for people who stutter. The acronym for that is ARTS, if you want to Google that. So I asked her to come and speak to the Word on the Speech, Keep Them Talking community, because I tend to focus on the younger ones and the parents of the younger ones. And, if we're thinking about the journey as a parent, there's two really hard kind of transitional periods. It's when the stuttering first happens, it first kind of shows up just overnight a lot of times, and kind of I like to swoop in and just, support them, give them all the things they need to know so they can make really good decisions about what they want to do to help their child. The other transition that can be really, almost equally as difficult is that one where they kind of move out of the preschool aged age bracket where, we know that therapy can eliminate stuttering in some cases. And, that's the goal, elimination, and then building up that confidence, right? And then when we move to school age and adolescence and into adult, the focus of therapy changes. We still hope to eliminate, but the chances of that happening are less. And so we really move to management and acceptance. And so I kind of want to speak to that part of our community here at the Word on the Speech Facebook page. And so I asked my best SLP friend, and as a parent, it can very much feel like you're on an island and you're alone and nobody understands, but it can also feel like that as a therapist, a speech therapist, because there's just not a whole bunch of us that, specialize in stuttering. So without further ado, I have Jessica here for you. So I am putting you on the hot spot today. So I have a list of questions that I want to get through. And just, I can't wait to hear your answers for some of these. Okay, you ready? So my first question is, what does treatment or therapy look like with this age group?
Sure. So I think my answer to a lot of these is going to be, it depends. Because we really want to individualize therapy. So I think the reason why we are trained in so many different types of therapy approaches like LIDCOM or the Palin PCI or ART is because there's not really a one size fits all for every child. So many people know about or may learn about tools and strategies. Well, that's really fine and well, but there's not really a one size tool or a one size treatment approach. So it's really individualized. I would say, to speak to what you already said, Kelly, to think about this transition period from maybe the goal may have been elimination of stuttering when they were 3 years old. Now that the child is entering, they're in second or third grade, they've been stuttering for quite some time, the goals might shift a little bit. And at this point, it might be building their confidence level up, making sure that they're prepared for different types of speaking situations that might come up, whether they stutter or not in those situations, and just helping them to feel like they have choices in their communication and with their stuttering. So if they choose to use a tool, then they have that in their toolbox. If they choose not to because they're playing with their friends and they don't want to think about it, then that's their choice. So that's kind of what I would say therapy might look like, that transition period from preschool to elementary.
Right. So there's more than just tools that are worked on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We actually did a little questionnaire with some clients because I knew we were doing this interview, and one of my clients, I'll read their quote, and they said,
my gosh,
I'm
excited.
They said, don't force your child to do tools.
Oh,
So that was from a client who stutters. So,
okay. And I was going to save that for a little bit down the road, but you just opened the door. No, just that kind of why that is. And I think as a parent, you think, from a parent's perspective, I can totally understand why they're like, what we just want talking to be easier for you, and so why wouldn't you just use your tools?
mm-hmm.
And, and so I think that's the struggle of like, we want the best for them. And we think the best for them is, talking just like their friends, right? So why is there such a disconnect between, their success in using the tools or their choice to use the tools during our sessions versus when they are talking to friends and family?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of asked a couple things there, so I'll try to address everything. I think you're right. As parents and therapists, we want our kids to be happy and healthy and have a successful life and do all the things that they are born to do. And it's hard to see a struggle. I will say sometimes, in some cases, some kids who stutter, it's not a struggle for them and they don't really even care that they stutter. And so it might be more a parent or a teacher or an adult's perception that it's a struggle for them. And so when we start forcing tools or forcing them to speak in a different way, and it's the child is thinking, I don't really care, I just want to play and learn math and do these things. So that's kind of in one case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids really do care and
Mm-hmm.
they really don't want to stutter. And so parents sense that too. And parents definitely know their child best.
Mm-hmm.
And they want them to be fixed, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, tools are great and they can help make speech feel a little bit less tense, maybe a little smoother. They are not a cure for stuttering. They're not a fix for stuttering. And sometimes we want so badly, and even as a speech pathologist, I get in this mindset sometimes like, oh, if only they would use this tool and it would fix their stuttering. But that's really not what we're trying to do. We want them to have joyful communication, easy communication. And easy communication doesn't necessarily mean no stuttering or stutter free.
Right. I think that that I have so many thoughts going through my mind, but first acknowledging the child who really isn't bothered as much by their stuttering as perhaps their parents, and, so for them, I wish, or what I would say is, the end goal for me and the name of my course to be is keep them talking, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't say make them fluent, or keep them talking smoothly. It's just talking, that their voice and what they have to offer the world is number one. And if they are doing that and stuttering, I think that they're there, they're winning. And so sometimes that's just a shift in mindset for parents to understand, but also if that's your child, good job, parent, because you've raised a child who has confidence and who already knows that what they have to say to the world is important and they don't care how it comes out, So that was one thing I thank you for bringing up. And then the second one is the child that is really bothered by it. It's really limiting their life, but they still don't use strategies, and that's really hard to reconcile as a parent. Like, here's a thing that is, making you feel so terrible, right? And here's a thing that parents think can fix it. So it's like, why? It's really, I just can really, great. I hope that doesn't get recorded, but so like reconciling those two starkly different things.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll say that, you know, because I get that question a lot. I got this question yesterday. I really want my child to use their tools. They're just not using them at home. How can we get them to use them more? And, you know, it really is the child's choice. As hard as that is as a parent, or a teacher or an SLP, it's really their choice. And I kind of think about it, and I don't know if this is a great analogy, but I think about it as learning another language, because, you know, it's hard. If you don't have that full vocabulary, if you don't know how to use the accent of another language, it's really hard to do that. So if I were trying to speak to you in another language in this conversation we're having today, and I only knew maybe 5 words out of that language, this would be really, really, really difficult for me and take a lot of brain power. And so it's just, it's hard.
Yeah.
I have this one, I had a professor in grad school. She told me this, and I will never forget this. She said, think about when you go to the beach maybe, and you have your bathing suit on, you kind of stand up a little taller, you suck it in a little bit, you walk with more confidence, and then you go home to your family at the end of the day. You might get a bowl of ice cream, you put your sweatpants on, and you let it all hang out. And you don't worry so much when you're with your family, because that's where you're comfortable. Most kids, not all, but most kids are really comfortable in their home. And so they don't feel the need to use tools. They don't feel like they need to change the way they're talking, because they're so comfortable there. And maybe at school all day, they felt pressure to do and act a certain way.
Yeah. I love that you brought the analogy, because I'm always searching for the perfect way to help parents understand that. And the language one is one that I was thinking about actually today. So it's so funny you thought that. So, you know, I guess I'm speaking to the parent who's like, why are they so fluent in speech, you know, when they're working with us, and then they come home and they don't use your strategy? And, you know, like you said, and I use, like, when you're like dressed up in like a suit and, you know, going to work in heels, and you come home, you're like, you take the bra off, and like, you're just, and you just, and so in that way, for parents to know is like, your child feels that comfortable with you, and he just wants to talk with joy and without that constant monitoring. It takes a lot of practice. And when I have my parent, or it takes a lot of like out of the engagement of communication. And so when my parents are doing just their 5-minute special time with the little ones, and they're like, you know, gosh, it's like so hard. And I'm like, yes, it is. And imagine asking that of someone to do that all the time. You know, it does kind of take this kind of hovering, watching, monitoring, which, you know, and the parents like, yeah, I kind of was just so into it. And I just got like, I just lost track of my strategy. And then you kind of pull in. And same thing for kids. It's like, they can use it, but the more you, the stronger you feel in your thought or your emotion, the more, you know, you're in the present moment. So that's one thing. But with the kind of language, kind of taking off that from you, is I think of it as, say you were learning you just learned as an adult a new language, right? And you were talking to your husband at home in your new language, right? And you're like, you said something, and he's maybe a little bit more proficient than you. And he says, oh, you know, he makes you correct, you know, actually it's said like this. So go ahead and say it again like that for me. How would you feel? You're like, come on. You know, first it tells you, were you really listening to me, or were you listening to how I was saying it, which is, you know, stuttering. And secondly, it's like, I don't want to hear that from you. Like, you know what I said. And to kind of make me go back and say it again, it just kind of, you lose that connection of the conversation. Right. And then parents like, well, and so that is one thing. And so it's like, well, why do they do it with you? Like, why is it okay with you? Because then we get them in our session one-on-one, and we're like, okay, so do the same thing. And that we see them get, you know, stuck, and we're like, use your strategy, go back, try that again. And like, we do the same things we're kind of encouraging parents not to do. But then I liken it to, well, if you were say this was a language, French, right? So, but if you were you were seeing your French tutor and she did that to you, like fixed your grammar or your accent, you'd be like, okay, because that's why we're here, to get better at using this tool. And so at the end of the day, it really is child led or client led, right? And it's like, I think we're giving them these tools, we're helping them get really good at using the tools, and they can use it when they want or when they need. And, even at that, they don't work all the time, so you still have to address this thing called confidence and resilience. And so how does that show up in the kind of teenager angsty age?
Yeah, well, I actually just had a session with a client just now, and he's going into middle school, and I wanted to wish him the best of luck. Middle school is hard. It's so hard. It's an awkward time. I feel like there's some kids who are super short and some kids who look like adults. There's, all this puberty thing is happening. Hormones are going crazy. Kids are starting to care a lot more about how they look and act and what other people think of them. It's just such an awkward time. And so then you add stuttering to that, and now you look and sound different. And so that's just such a challenging situation for a lot of kids and teens, preteens, maybe. Tweens, is this what they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so tricky. And I think, some people believe or have the idea, there's this misconception that anxiety causes stuttering. Well, that's not a fact. Anxiety can increase the amount of stuttering and it can change how people stutter, but it's not the cause of stuttering. Some people might have a diagnosis of anxiety or an anxiety disorder and they stutter. So some kids might have that and some may not. But the fact that a person stutters, so actually, if you think about it kind of as a cycle, it seems like I stutter and then I become anxious because I stutter, and then I stutter more because now I'm anxious about it, and now I'm going to be more anxious about it. And it's like this cycle that just keeps going on and on. And so that's actually a humongous part of the speech therapy I do. I know a lot of SLPs have some different approaches and have different strategies, but really what I would say is if anybody's looking for an SLP, ask them, is it totally about tools, or do you work on this emotional part and the mindset? And not everybody experiences anxiety. I'm kind of using that as a catch-all phrase. But
that could be anxiety. It could be, these tricks to stop, to not stutter. And, it all falls into, what is the thing that's impacting your life. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. With the anxiety, we know that by working on that, kind of meeting the stuttering, face to face and dealing with what that makes you feel, and like incrementally kind of, challenging yourself and just kind of sitting with that feeling of stuttering. We know that the secondary results of therapy like that is a lot of times more fluency, right? If you can kind of tackle the anxiety, kind of tame it, then you're not fighting like what you resist persists kind of idea.
Yeah, I tell clients all the time, the more you fight it, the more you're going to stutter and the harder it's going to be. You're going to start developing these tricks, as you said, like maybe closing your eyes or making a fist or stomping your foot or moving your head back. Any of those tricks to get out of and avoid stuttering or escape stuttering, those are really not helpful, and they can continue to grow and grow and grow. And like a snowball, thinking about a snowball rolling down a mountain, it just grows. And so we really don't want all of these tricks. We want our kids to be confident, even if they stutter.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about how what would be your steps as a clinician to kind of tackle that anxiety piece? How does that look? And then we'll kind of circle and maybe finish with specific ways to kind of build that confidence.
Do we have 17 hours? That's a really big question. And I would say again that it depends. It depends on the client, because especially middle schoolers, some don't really want to talk. Mm-hmm. And some, are pretty reserved, and some will spill their guts to you. Mm-hmm. And so it really depends on the client. For me, as an SLP treating a client, I look for what motivates them, what they're interested in, and we kind of use that. So, sometimes we might use video games. A lot of our clients like video games. So sometimes we talk about, okay, what was really hard in that video game when you were fighting that monster? I don't know. And what was really easy for you? And so then relating that to communication. Okay, when was there a time where you felt like it was really hard to talk? And let's maybe problem solve that a little bit, because you can problem solve in your video game. So let's see if we can problem solve in a communication situation. That's just one example.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
that's
and kind of saying like, I like to use, if you didn't stutter, what would you be doing more of? What is the thing they feel like they're missing out on, and it could be like, I don't know, being in journalism club or, something really lofty and scary for them. And so having that be here, and like you're saying, kind of work, like what is a little bit less scary, and finding that thing that's like out of your comfort zone, but small, small gains and small wins. And even if they feel scary, highlighting, but you did it anyway, and you're alive. And what did they do? Like because the worst case scenario, and even as parents, you think, when my son started stuttering, my mind went, knowing all that I know, my mind went to like, oh God, like you think about, like, I'm like, he's going to be fine. But what is the world going to do to him? And you can't protect them against the world, and so just kind of that feeling as a parent is scary, but it's also, the world isn't that cruel. It can, our mind, like we're built as humans to focus way more on the one bad thing that someone says about us, as professionals, as people, we are wired to focus on that, to like, as a species kind of evolve, but we tend to not recognize or not see or forget all of the great interactions, all of the times you stuttered and it went fine. So kind of building that awareness of what really happened there. Like, let's dissect that. You did it. And how do you feel? Like, do you feel, you said what you wanted to say? How did that feel? And what was the reality? Was the guy like, ha, ha, or was it like, okay, kind of weird, but you did it anyway, and helping them see like those little small victories along the way.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's really, really, really important, is focusing on those wins and the positives, because our brains are wired to go to that, fixating on that negative one time something happened. And so thinking about, okay, well, what about those 100 times that you spoke up in class and nobody said anything? And also, I think a lot of my clients and kids who stutter, and adults, worry so much about what other people think. And so teaching kids and helping them to realize that we literally have no idea what other people are thinking unless they tell us, but we're not mind readers, and helping kids to work through knowing that you can't predict what somebody else is thinking or what they're going to do. Worrying about it does absolutely nothing other than make us feel icky. So,
right. And what they thought of you in that moment was a moment, because everybody's just so much more involved in their own life. They're not going to bed thinking, oh, that guy said kind of funny that day, they're moving on. And so, teaching them like your energy, where are you going to focus your energy? Like the main thing is what you have to say is important. And at the end of the day, you're going to feel really good going through a day where you said everything that you wanted, and kind of sending home that message. What So another question I have, what is the biggest obstacle that you kind of come to in therapy? Like, so say they're great with their tools, they seem like they're on the right path, confidence wise, anxiety wise, or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the kid seems fine and there's just some kind of disconnect between your room and real life.
Should I be real honest with your
Yes, please.
Okay, this is honest. I think the biggest challenge I see in therapy is a disconnect between parents and their child and the SLP. Mm-hmm. And so not all being on the same page. I think parents want a certain thing for their kid, and sometimes kids don't know what that is, mm-hmm. or don't want the same thing. And sometimes the SLP doesn't know about that dynamic. And so just the difficulty maybe and the lack of communication between all of the parties involved, I think is really challenging, mm-hmm. because maybe I might have a meeting with a parent and they tell me I want these things. These are the goals that I have for my child. And then the child says, these are my goals for myself. And then the SLP might have an idea of what they think the goals should be. And so mm-hmm. I think just making sure that everybody's on the same page and mm-hmm. communicating with one another. Mm-hmm. It is so okay to talk to your kids about stuttering, even if they give you one-word answers, which mm-hmm. some of them do. Mm-hmm. It's really, really important. Ask them, mm-hmm. How do you want me to react to your stutter?
Yeah.
If you are having a hard time, do you want me to ask you to stop?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. Keep going.
Yeah. Or do you want me to just listen? Mm-hmm. Or do you want me to give you help? Because every kid's going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I tell you to do might not work for your child. So just ask them.
Right. Yep.
And have those conversations more than once. And sometimes it's nice to do it in a speech therapy room where it's kind of a safe environment and the speech therapist can kind of guide the questions to everybody so that it kind of comes out a little bit more and is easier. But, that's just something that I feel like is really challenging, is not being on the same page and kids feeling like they should be fixed. Mm-hmm. Because they're not really talking about it. They just know they have to go to speech therapy and they know their parent thinks something might be wrong. And mm-hmm. so they never really talked about it.
Yeah.
And now the SLP is thrown in the middle. And so it's just communicating with being kind of on the same page, I think is important. And it's so okay to talk to your kids about stutter. It's okay to use the word stutter or stammer mm-hmm. if you're in another country. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Yeah. I just created a whole 8-page resource about that idea. And I'm thinking about it when they're old, so start young, definitely. If your child is struggling, ignoring it is not, like pretending like it's not happening. Parents like to think it's, we want to make a big deal. We don't of it. But I'm just thinking about that. And I know we have to wrap up as in the age where the kids just don't want to talk to their parent about anything, so I can see the parent like, oh yeah, great. Like he doesn't even want to tell me like what he's doing tomorrow, like let alone about his stuttering. But what I would just end with is that you just opening the door, you just saying like, I am here to support you. How does that look to you? And if they're like, Mom, stop, they hear that you're still there. And you're an open door. You're not a closed door. And that alone, you may sit in that space for years where they're shutting you out, but at least they'll know that they have a safe place at home that accepts them and just wants to know how they can help. And sometimes the best way to help is just to not help. It's mm-hmm. just to listen. Mm-hmm. So I think we should end at that. Okay. I think we could have talked for hours. I mean, I know we do over coffee. Like it's not a coffee date, it's a coffee morning with us. But where can they find you and start following you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Stuttering Therapy AZ. And our website is stutteringtherapyaz.com, I think.
I think you're right. All right.
That's it.
Thank you so much. I think that was wonderful. And I think it's really going to help a lot of parents.
Yeah, happy to help.
All right. Have a good day.
Okay.